Solutions. The obstacles are political and social in character rather than technological or economic. If America can afford to spend $300 billion bailing out two mortgage firms and one insurance company, we can afford to build renewable energy base. I mean, there's figures in the book. If you take, what's been spent in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's enough to rebuild China's and India's energy systems to be post-coal. This is not a question of economic capacity, nor is it a question of technology. This is an image from a demonstration in Paris in 1882 of a printing press being run by a solar thermal unit. So the technology we need is not tomorrow's, it's not even today's, it's actually yesterday's technology. It's not rocket science, renewable energy. It's not sending Apollo to the moon. It's much simpler than that. Which is why Al Gore in July gave his challenge to America. I'm sure you all saw it, where he got up on the stage and he had a guy called T. Boone Pickens. I can say that all night, I just love it. T. Boone Pickens, a Texas oil man and hedge fund, billionaire who's committed with Gore to this thing. And he said, our challenge in America is to produce zero emissions electricity in 10 years. And I don't think that he did it because he was bored or he needed another Nobel Peace Prize, he wanted to sell more books. I actually think he said it because he believed it was absolutely necessary based on the science. This was a zero emissions electricity target from Gore because it is necessary. And he says the goal is achievable, affordable and transformative. And the transformative word is really interesting. And I think it's wonderful that he did it. And given the number of groups who signed on to our letter, I do believe that the bulk, certainly all the local climate groups and the conservation councils, and I believe, and I hope Greenpeace, if not some of the green Clean Coal's wonderful lobby, who might be very venerable, but the rest will start campaigning on that Gore challenge for Australia, because that, I think, is the campaign we have to have to the Australian government, and that is to say zero emissions from electricity in 10 years. If a Texas oil man can say we can do it, now Gore says we can do it, and the greatest solar thermal man in the world, David Mills from Sydney, went to California and says that solar thermal can produce 90% of base load, and people who are advising the Victorian government are now saying that in 1 to 2 decades solar thermal and geothermal will be the cheapest forms of energy, even if coal emissions don't have a price on it, because of technical innovation, increasing economies of scale and rising fossil fuel prices. What is the lesson from this? If we have an emergency, a flood or a fire or a tsunami or whatever, we actually go into a different social mode. Politics is about not solving the problem, it's about solving 10% of the problem or putting off till the next election. When we really want to solve a problem, like a fire that's racing through half of Victoria, we don't put a contract out for firefighting services and ask the merchant banks to set up some firefighting services and compete for who's going to be the cheapest person to have a market in firefighting. We actually just go and fight the fire. It's called solving the problem. And that emergency mode is something we do when we really want to do it. So we know that wars are a really good example of that. The Americans tried to keep out of the Second World War until after Pearl Harbor. And in 1 year, that economy was transformed from the largest producer of consumer goods to the largest producer of military goods in a year. Not a good thing, but it just demonstrates if you want to transform an economy, you can do it. You just don't leave it to the market. You just do it. How much is reasonable to spend? We have this delusional debate about half of 1% is too much and we'll all be broke and, woe is me and, there goes my plasma and, my sort of patio heater. That should be the first things. They should all be burned. In the Second World War, in 1943, the four major powers spent between 42 and 70% of their economy on the war, on the emergency. And we know that Nicholas Stern said that the effects of climate change would be greater than the effect of the two world wars and the Depression put together. And that was sort of on the light side. So if we can spend 40 to 70% of our economy to save ourselves from that emergency, why are we quibbling about 0.5% for something that threatens to destroy all of us in this earth? It is delusional. If it's 3 or 5 or 10%, surely that is a reasonable thing to do. We can spend 40%, destroying each other. So my message is this, that a fast transition which we need to do this at emergency speed. If we don't, it will be too late. UN Secretary General calls it an emergency. The head of UNFCCC calls it an emergency. It is an emergency. It can't be an incremental politics designed to fail solution which we've got to now. We actually have to deal with the problem, call a spade and solve it. We can do it if we want to. What I think we lack in this country is the belief that we can transform the way we do things. Our beliefs have become commodified. We can do it. Kennedy said we're going to send a person to the moon in 10 years. They did it because they wanted to do it. They built an atom bomb in 2 years. They didn't even know how to enrich uranium when they started. If you want to do it, you can do it. And I think that's the message we've got to take from the bottom to the top. I think we need to treat politicians like a bulldog treats a person's leg. That is, that we grab hold and we don't let go. And that question at the beginning about we are too polite is correct. This is, the guy from the WWF who said the Arctic's dead, he said we have got 2 years to get this idea across, which was to the end of Copenhagen, or it's all over. And the scientists are saying that as well. We've got 2 years to get this message across. We should grab hold of that political process, devote ourselves to it, and not let go. That means sitting in their offices for days at a time so they don't operate, can't operate. Mums with their babies spending their days in there changing nappies and feeding them, waiting for answers to questions, then so be it. If they can't operate, if they have to shift offices, so be it. If we don't do it like this, it won't happen. We have the capacity. This is not about policy. The delusion is that climate is about policy. It's not, it's about power. And we do have the power to make life very uncomfortable and get this message up. At the base, everybody knows this. Everybody you talk to, we're talking about this afternoon, you're talking local groups, everybody knows this story. They're waiting for government to act. The Labor Party advisors like Rod Cameron and Hugh Mackay have been on 7:30 Report pleading with Rudd to do it because the people are ahead of him. So I think we do have an opportunity to get this message across, but it has got to be this message of emergency action because there are only two possibilities: doing it at emergency speed or not being here. All the middle-of-the-road solutions are too late. Garner is delusional. David Caroli said after Garner said, I think you scientists misunderstand me. David Caroli, who's a very eminent climate scientist, heads at Melbourne University, said, "No, Mr. Garner, we understand you. You have just given up." And that's the truth. And so I think we have a very short period of time to try and get this message out there. I'm very optimistic that the scientists are now becoming very strong in this message. I'm very optimistic that the climate groups will be much stronger in this message, and we've just got to give it the best go we can. Thank you very much.